With the new Fast and Furious Hobbs and Shaw movie out, there are 9 Fast and the Furious movies. So let's rank these movies from worst to best. Hey everybody, my name is Justin. I love to watch movies. If you guys love to watch movies too, you guys are in the right spot. Make sure to hit that subscribe button down below. Click that bell notification so you guys don't miss any of my up and coming videos. With the release of Hobbs and Shaw, there are 9 Fast and Furious movies. I can't believe that there are 9. I remember seeing the very first Fast and Furious film in the drive-ins, and I remember getting Too Fast, Too Furious for my 11th birthday. So the franchise has definitely come a long way. So before we do get into this ranking video, make sure to leave your ranking down below for all 9 of the Fast and Furious movies, starting with the first Fast and Furious movie all the way up until Hobbs and Shaw. So with that being said, let's start this video off with number 9, Tokyo Drift. The first time I ever heard about Tokyo Drift, I didn't see any trailer, I didn't see any news on the computer because I was a little bit young and I didn't have access to a computer. So the first time I actually saw anything about Tokyo Drift, I was in Disneyland in 2006 and I saw a poster for it at the AMC theater behind Disneyland, and I was like, what is this? I had never heard anything about this. And I feel like Tokyo Drift is really one of the only movies that really focuses on cars. There are some really great drifting sequences that I really enjoy. I think this movie tried too hard to capture the relationship that Brian and Roman Pierce had previously. So you have Sean and Twinkie, the friends in this movie. Twinkie is very outgoing, he's funny, just like Roman Pierce, and Sean oddly looks a lot like Paul Walker too. He's a very quiet guy. The relationship doesn't really work in this movie. This movie's just kind of boring at times. The villain is weak. The love interest, Neela, is okay. The only thing that's really going good for this movie is its introduction of Han. I thought Han was a really enjoyable character. I did notice something when watching Tokyo Drift, and it's not the director's fault for anything for this movie or Fast 5. Is the fact that Han feels more confident in Fast 5 and Furious 6, much more than he was in Tokyo Drift. In Tokyo Drift, it's supposed to be after Fast 5 and Fast and Furious 6. It seems like Han's character took a step back in Tokyo Drift, even though it's the first movie that we get the introduction of Han. They made him a much stronger character in Fast 5 and Fast and Furious 6. Here in Tokyo Drift, he's not that strong as he was in the other movies. Just a thing I noticed about this movie. But the drifting sequences are really great. It's a lot of focus on racing, which I do love. Characters are really weak, and it's not a very engaging movie. Coming at number 8 is Fast and Furious. This is the reunion of Dom and Brian, and I enjoyed seeing them together, and I like how they continued that storyline from the first Fast and the Furious movie, even though after that they had 2 other movies that could have disregarded that relationship, but they still managed to not forget about what Brian did to Dom, and you know he's a cop, so the relationship, they still have to work for it. It's not going to be easy for them, but you still enjoy that brother relationship that they have throughout the movie. I feel like Fast and Furious, the 4th one, is the least exciting movie. It does have a really cool opening sequence, but from there, this movie is not very memorable, and it's very lackluster. Coming in at number 7 is the Fast and Furious 6. The franchise could have ended after Fast 5. Fast 5 ended on a high note. It ended good, everybody's story kind of wrapped up, but then you had to bring Fast and Furious 6, you had to bring back Letty, and then you had to bring back The Rock and him recruiting Dom and his team to do something for him in London against Owen Shaw. And so from there, the movie unfortunately becomes those government movies, this team doing something for the government. And even though Fast and Furious 6 is enjoyable at times, it tried too hard to move this franchise in a new direction. It was a change of pace to see Dom, Brian, Mia, Tej, and Roman Pierce, Han, Giselle, all do things for The Rock and the government, when previously they wanted to just steal a bunch of money and they didn't care what was going on around them. Fast and Furious 6 is where it completely changes what the movies are about. Towards the end it gets really ridiculous. Owen Shaw was a decent villain, but still at times it's not very exciting. Coming at number 6 is the newest film, Hobbs and Shaw. Hobbs Shaw was a crazy, pointless, ridiculous movie that didn't make any sense. And I watched the trailer so many times, so I was expecting something absolutely bonkers. And at times I did get that, but I think I wanted a little bit more. I wanted more craziness. I want it to just be absolutely insane. Dwayne Johnson is great in his role, and I also like Jason Statham as Deckard Shaw. They are people who really hate each other, but they must work together, and so their banter back and forth at times is funny, but also feels a little bit repetitive. And the franchise's theme of family continues with this movie, where we get to see a little more of Luke Hobbs' family. Vanessa Kirby is great in her role. I also liked Idris Elba as Brixton Lore. This movie is ridiculous, it's a lot of fun, but I wish I had a little more with it. Coming in at number 5 is Furious 7. This is probably the most emotional Fast and Furious film. After the tragic loss of Paul Walker, this movie had a hard task of using the scenes that they had for Paul Walker as well as finishing the movie. But it's easy to tell which scenes are Paul Walker and which scenes that they tried to fix and redo for the movie. I absolutely love Brian O'Connor. He's one of my favorite characters in the Fast and Furious franchise, and it's still hard to believe that Paul Walker is gone. So watching Furious 7 in theaters, I think 6 or 7 times. That end scene is just so emotional and a perfect way to wrap up the story for the character. You could really feel the emotion from Vin Diesel as that scene was filmed. I think it was a touching tribute. Everything else, I think, was really well done. There's some really great action sequences. This movie's grand, it's epic. There's cars coming out of airplanes. There's cars jumping out of buildings. There's so many crazy things that are happening, and I absolutely love it. We have an introduction of Ramsey, who joins the team, and her character is welcomed. We also have Deckard Shaw, played by Jason Statham in the movie. Crazy guy, and really challenges Dom's team. Definitely puts up a good fight, and he's a very enjoyable character. Coming in at number 4 is The Fate of the Furious. In the 8th movie, you have to do something a little bit different, and something a little different is having Dom turn against his team. Something that I never thought would happen, but it really works for the story and progressing the franchise. Cypher, played by Charlize Theron, is a great villain. She's very resourceful, she has a well thought out plan, and much like Furious 7, this movie can get very big and very epic, and a lot of action scenes that don't make sense at all. And this is probably one of the best performances from Vin Diesel. He gets very emotional throughout the movie, realizing what he needs to do against his team in order to save his son's life. So I really like Vin Diesel's performance, and everybody else is really great in the movie. We have Scott Eastwood as Little Nobody. I liked his character. Nothing truly outstanding, but very enjoyable. But I like how this movie switched characters up and tried to do something a little different. Coming in at number 3 is Too Fast, Too Furious. Now I know a lot of people have this towards the bottom of the list, but this is for pure nostalgia with me. I watched this movie so much. I had the DVD back in the day, the Snapcase ones, and I had all of the toys for Too Fast, Too Furious. My grandpa got me coats from Portland, Oregon, that said Too Fast, Too Furious, and I had like a green, blue, and red and orange coat as well. And I love Too Fast, Too Furious. I think Too Fast, Too Furious is probably the most innocent and fun of these movies. The relationship between Brian O'Connor and Roman Pierce is a lot of fun. You can tell that Roman and Brian definitely have a different relationship compared to Brian and Dom, where Brian and Dom had like that family brotherly relationship, and Roman and Brian go way back and they have that kind of fun relationship. They joke a lot with each other. Carter Verone is a really menacing villain in this movie. He's really intimidating. They are scared of Carter Verone. And this movie has a lot of great racing sequences. It's ridiculous when they're racing and everything's just blurring past them. And you think they're going like 500 miles per hour, but really they're going like 75 down a stretch of road. So this movie does get a little ridiculous. It has the Too Fast, Too Furious song by Ludacris that I still love listening to. It's a fun movie. It's very innocent. It's really just, but it's crazy. It's got like a fun vibe going for it. The location works with this movie. I absolutely loved it watching when I was a kid, and I still enjoy this movie. Coming in at number 2 is the first Fast and the Furious film. The first Fast and the Furious film introduced us to Brian and Dom and Letty and Mia. We also had Vince and Leon and Jesse in the film, and Johnny Tran as the villain. This movie felt very grounded. It took place in Los Angeles. There was a lot of racing going on. Everything is just whizzing past them as they're driving. They think they're going so fast. They're using NOS constantly. But then you know that Brian was a cop working undercover, trying to figure out who's stealing products off of trucks, when you know it's Dom. So they built up this relationship that seemed very genuine, and then switched it on its head and said, you know, I'm a cop, and he let him go, and Brian let Dom go at the end. I love the story. I love the setup for the characters. I love the movie's theme of family. And to this day, I still absolutely love watching the Fast and the Furious. Coming in at number 1 is Fast 5. Fast 5 is such a good movie. I absolutely love 5. I love the end when they open the safe and all the money pours out, and they play that song by Don Omar. It is such a good song. It always gets me hyped. But Fast 5 could have been a good way to end the franchise. Everybody got their money. They were ready to live the life that they wanted to. They had that ridiculous scene where they had their cars attached to the safe and they're driving it down the streets. It's absolutely bizarre, but still a fun scene. There's a lot of racing going on. There's a lot of cat and mouse scenes between The Rock and Dom and his team. There's a lot of testosterone just flowing through this movie. From the action sequences to the team up scenes, all of it's a lot of fun. It's definitely a different movie compared to the previous 4 films, and Fast 5 is easily my favorite film of them all. So there you guys have it, all 9 of the Fast and Furious movies ranked worst to best. How would you rank these movies? Let me know in the comment section down below. You guys are the best as always. This is Just Watch Movies, and you guys stay classy, YouTube.